Good morning, everybody. How we doing today? So, today is Coffee Talk and Tech's first live stream. So, Coffee Talk and Tech is something that I wanted to start about 12 years ago. Originally, I was going to start a YouTube channel that was just going to be really about motorcycles. And I was going to be test driving motorcycles, going over motorcycles and discussing the things that I like. Basically just giving reviews of motorcycles. So that's what I wanted to do 12 years ago. It never happened. I never got to that point. And so here I am. I start a tech channel on YouTube and on Facebook. And I'm doing tech reviews, tech tutorials, and that's mostly what I wanted to do. But it's called Coffee Talk and Tech. So the Coffee Talk part is something that I wanted to add into everything. And the Coffee Talk has not started yet, and today is the first day that it's starting. So I wanted to start off with talking about my love for motorcycles. So today we are on Facebook and on YouTube, and we are live streaming to both, simulcasting. And if you're out there and you're watching, this is my first live stream, and we are hitting it off today. And 2 days ago was my birthday, so 50 years old, December 17th. Anybody who signed up for my Facebook page or my YouTube, thank you so much. I appreciate all that. That was awesome. And I'm glad you're all here today. If you're watching, you can leave a comment and I can interact also with the comments from Facebook and from YouTube. So if you're out there, don't be afraid to drop a comment, say hi, let me know how you're doing and how your day's going. So Carrie Ryan, thanks for stopping in. It's my sister. Good morning. How are you all doing? So I want to talk about my love for motorcycle riding, how I got there. I'm going to give you a little backstory in a minute and explain where I am now. And then we're going to kind of like backpedal a little bit into the story. So today, if you're just getting in here, we're going to do our first coffee talk. And I think what I'm going to do is I am going to have a different mug each week for a while. I have a bunch of mugs. So today I got my son on here and me with the mug. And of course, I have my coffee. You got to have your coffee. So I got my coffee. What do you put in your coffee? Right now, what I do is I do a bulletproof coffee, which is like butter in my coffee. I blend it and put 2 stevias, and that's my morning coffee. And God, do I love my morning coffee. So I got my coffee. We're set up, and we're going to discuss your love for motorcycles. So if you come in here and you're watching, drop a note, say hi, and don't be afraid to ask a question along the way. So I want to say there's my sister. She's dropping by for a minute to say hi. I appreciate it. This is my first live stream, so for my channels. So it's nice to see that. And then also my son is dropping in to say hello too. And a little plug for this guy. He has his own YouTube channel, and he is called Matt's Mission. Okay, and he does Roblox games and some vlogging and etc. Okay, so my love for bikes, and Carrie says she likes raw sugar and milk. So that sounds pretty good. I like that. And right now, I just go to 2 stevias and I do the butter. And if I don't do that, I'm doing the 2 stevias and like, half and half. But so if you are here and you do have a motorcycle or you've been riding, drop a note. Let me know, what motorcycle do you own now, or what motorcycle have you had? even drop a note. What was your favorite, or maybe you don't have one right now and you want to get one, and what is some of the bikes that are out there that would interest you right now in the market. I mean, the great thing is the used market is always a plus to buy a motorcycle, because you're 1-2 years in on a bike, you can save so much money. And later on, when we get into the bikes, I'll talk to you about some of the deals that I have gotten. But when I start out, I just really I want to give a little backstory with, like I said. So I have been riding motorcycles since probably I was about 10 years old. I have been around motorcycles for a very long time. And since I've been, pretty much born, because I do have two uncles that ride motorcycles, and they have always been my passion, those motorcycles. And so watching them grow up around me with my uncles, and then always having that around, was amazing. So here is a picture of me on a motorcycle. I'm about 2 years old, maybe 2.5, and this is my Uncle Paul right here. And we're riding in my grandmother's yard. And so we could see what a big influence this was all on me at a real young age. And I want to tell you right now, this helmet right here that you see on my Uncle Paul, this helmet would probably go for $400 or $500 right now. It's got the stars on it and the stripes like the American flag, and that helmet right now is a real hot vintage helmet, classic. So that's me basically at a young age being influenced on the bikes by my uncles, my Uncle Paul, my Uncle Leonard, and both of them were amazing. So they were great riders. You have to be semi crazy to ride like they did, because the way they rode was like nothing you've seen. Pretty much when you see people, the dirt bike or the motocross racers on TV, they were about as close as you could get to seeing them live. I've never seen too many people ride like they did live. So that was pretty awesome growing up to have those influences. So I'm going to start out with a backstory of my first bike, how I got it, what it was. And if you started riding a dirt bike first before you got to road bikes, put a message down in there what kind of dirt bike it was, and if that was the case. Even if it not so, tell me what your first bike is. I would love to know. So me, I started out, I was growing up in Bloomingdale, and that's where, if you're watching, maybe you've seen me before, or you know me. And so we might talk about some people that we do know. So I was about 10 years old or so, or 11, and Billy Hedden, who we all grew up in this apartment complex on Pleasant View Ave in the Heights of Bloomingdale. And when I was growing up, Billy Hedden, he comes to me, and I don't know why it was me. I don't know how he chose me or whatever, but we talked every day. We all grew up in the same apartment complex. So he comes up and he's like, John, do you have like $17 or so? Chip Marion, who's another guy that went to Butler High School, and where we all grew up and went to high school, he's selling his old motorcycle for $35. So yeah, $35. That's what he was selling it for. And I didn't know what it looked like. I didn't really care. I was like 10 or 11. So getting your hands on a bike was pretty awesome at that. So I'm like, I don't know how I got the money. I don't even remember how I got the money. All I know is I got that little bit of money, and we ended up going up to Chip Marion's house and buying this motorcycle for $35. So yeah, $35. So here comes this motorcycle out, and granted, we're, I don't know, 1.5 miles away from home on public roads. So we're basically pushing this thing or riding it side saddle up the roads to get home. Now, I don't know if you've ever seen this, or I'm old school and I've seen it before. So the bike comes out, and there's no shifter lever on there for your foot to shift the gears. There are a pair of vice grips. And so the vice grips are on there real tight, and I'm using that because what happened is the shifter lever got stripped out. Someone didn't tighten it, and then you just wear that thing out, and then there's no more you can do with that, and you have to throw a vice grip on there. So if you know what I'm talking about, drop in there and say, yep, I've seen that before. I don't know if too many people have. So we get the bike home. There's no clutch lever on it, and we're just popping it in first. And the same thing with the kick shift, the kickstart is stripped also. So we had to jump it. We take this bike, we get it home. Now the bike is a 1970 JT60, and it's a little two-stroke bike. This is before power bands even existed, and the bike is in pretty rowdy shape, but believe it or not, the engine runs pretty good. So we're psyched with it, and we're like, we're going to have fun with this. We don't care, we're excited. I'm about 10 years old, 11 years old, and Billy Hedden was like 4 or 5 years older than me. So around 15, 14, something like that. And so we get this bike back. We're goofing around on it for the day, and we tell our parents, it was my mom. So I told my mom, and she's like, oh, okay. And so, all right. So she saw it. She looked at it first. We were, she was kind of like, thought it was a little crazy, but she didn't mind because, my uncles grew up around motorcycles, my mom and all of us. So we jumped on the bandwagon with this. She was all going for it. So then Billy tells his mom, and his mom freaks out. She's like, I don't want you riding motorcycles, blah, 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 blah. And Billy had to sell his share of the motorcycle to me. So he comes to me and he's heartbroken, and he's like, I got to sell my bike. I can't keep it. And so I end up buying his side out. And I think I went back to my parents, my mom, and just like begged her for the money, or someone in my family to get some money for the bike. So excuse me. And so we get the bike, and now it's all mine. And the backstory to Billy, that's funny, is Billy, he had numerous bikes. I mean, I've ridden bikes with him on many occasions when we were growing up in our 20s. And I remember him zipping around on a GPZ 750, and then he went to a Harley. And so he was always on a bike at that point. And so you pretty much saw me right on the bike, and when I was like 2 or 3, and now I'm riding all the time. So you basically what happens at that point is your son sees you on your bikes all the time. So this is a picture of me, right, with my son giving me a high five as I take off on my motorcycle. So that was him coming up and giving me a high five as I take off for a ride. Isn't that pretty much how it works, right? It goes from you down to your kids. So if you know what I'm talking about, and anything what you do, that's pretty much the case. So now I get this bike, and it's falling apart. My uncle sees this bike, and he's pretty impressed. I show it to him. I tell him I got it for her. He was like laughing, and he tells me, and I didn't know this, he's like, that JT60 Yamaha is the same exact first bike that I had. And so I was pretty much blown away by that. I thought that was crazy. So I didn't even know this. I had no clue. And he tells me that he's pretty much going to rebuild this bike for me over the winter. And I'm like, sure, okay. What kid wouldn't want that, at that point? So, so if you're just stopping in here and you see me on Facebook, don't be afraid to say hi, drop a comment. If you're on YouTube, don't be afraid to drop a comment, ask a question. We're talking about the love of motorcycles, how you got there, what influenced you. What was maybe your first bike that caught your eye, or a situation or a family member, anything like that. So now my uncle's going to rebuild this bike over the winter. I'm like, okay. So he starts rebuilding this thing, and by spring, I look at this bike. It's got a clutch on it. He replaced the gear shifter shaft. He replaced everything that needed to work and function like perfect. I see the bike in the spring. It looks practically brand new. I'm blown away. I'm so impressed about how great it looks. So at the time, he is maybe thinking about buying a dirt bike at that time again. So he had him when he was young, and at this time he didn't. And so he fixed this up for me. And this is what I'm riding for like 2 years, a JT60 Yamaha. And I'm learning how to ride. I'm learning how to shift gears and all that stuff. And so it ends up being a great bike. It doesn't break down at all. It keeps on running. And that's basically where I learned all my fundamentals of learning how to ride a dirt bike. And then, of course, we go and we upgrade eventually to a different motorcycle. And we sell the JT60 at this time to Tony Preziosi, who is a guy who lived right down the street from me. He's got a bunch of brothers and sisters, and Tony was loving the bikes. Richie Preziosi was loving bikes. They had one at that time in their basement that had been sitting there for a few years, and they ended up getting that running again. And everybody in the area was starting to get bikes again. Like, it was like a fad at that time, to get a bike and start riding in the woods. And we had this whole area of woods. We just, at the end of the street, we're in the woods in Bloomingdale. And then we're riding up behind Glenwild Garden Center. And then we're hitting out onto the street and running up Andrew's place to this dead end. And that would get us into this area called Sculptor's Pit. And Sculptor's Pit was this little, it was our track. You go in there and you just zip around, and you got like jumps, and you're going in the pit, jumping out, all this stuff. So it was pretty awesome to be a kid and to be seeing all that kind of stuff. So we were all riding back there, and that became a thing that we did just every weekend. So I sell the bike to him, and I'm trying to upgrade to a different bike. And so we're looking around, and my uncles are helping me out with this. We're always looking for a bike to get an upgrade before the summertime comes. And we go, and I remember this. It's pretty vivid in my head, like the whole trip. And we go to, I think, around Haledon or Wyckoff or somewhere close to there. And we go and look at this bike at this kid's house. And when we get to the kid's house, we get into the backyard, and he's ripping around in his backyard on this bike. And, the bike sounds great. But the thing that we do notice is, like, we keep on hearing this sound, and we don't know what it sounds like. It's really bad. It's like metal against metal. And we find out his chain and sprockets are shot. I mean, they are shot. They're done. And he's like, doesn't care. He's zipping around, and the chain is actually skipping over the teeth and causing this noise. And it's pretty horrendous. So we see the bike. I mean, it seems to run pretty good, but it's definitely has its issues as we're looking at it. So it's just a whole funny story of my uncle, pretty much both of them, because my Uncle Paul and my Uncle Leonard were there, and they pretty much said, yeah, this bike kind of needs a little bit too much work, so we're going to have to end up passing on that. So we passed on that one, and we went home, and that was it. And I was kind of like really disappointed. I was like, oh man, that was a pretty cool bike. I mean, the kid's like, it's got Bose Reed valves. And I don't know if you guys remember Bose Reed valves, but if you had that, it gave you a quicker response on your throttle, and it was pretty awesome. And, it was like the in thing. And so it sounded great, and walking away from it was tough. So I get home, and I'm basically just chilling with my friends. I tell them about the bike we saw. It really wasn't the one for us. And so we pretty much got, we got moving on to the next bike. And so if you're just coming into this simulcast, I'm live on Facebook and live on YouTube. Just drop a note, say hi. We're talking about motorcycles. We're talking about how you found your love for motorcycle riding. What was the thing that really set you off? And if you want to drop a note down in there at all, tell me how long you've been riding or what you're riding. That would be fantastic. So we basically moved on, and I'm playing with my friends that day. And later on that day, I get back and my uncles are over because they were constantly growing up. They were around all the time. And I get back by our garage and I come to find out that they go, John, go into the garage and get this. I walk in there. There is that bike. It was a 1979 YZ80. It was the second year of the monoshock, and it's sitting in the garage. And this was my third dirt bike because I actually had a 78 first before that, YZ80. And we got a 79, and I can't even remember why we upgraded, but I think it was like some of the upgrades were pretty extraordinary for 1 year. So we ended up getting that bike and got it home, and he gets it and he basically throws on the ground some sprockets and the chain pack. And he's like, this is what you got to do first. Change the sprockets and chains. And I'm like, okay. So at that time, I knew nothing about changing sprockets or chains either. So he showed me exactly what to do, and threw me a 14, 15 millimeter wrench, started taking the back wheel off, which was something like an 18 millimeter, and then basically taking all the nuts off and rechanging the sprockets. And they helped me out, and they bought me the bike. So I was pretty blown away by that. I was so impressed. I was so thankful. I mean, it's like the coolest thing to have that bike sitting in your garage. You get home and that bike is there and you're just so excited. I can't even wait to get these sprockets and chains on so I can actually ride this thing. So at this time, as I told you, this motorcycle phenomenon is going crazy, and motocross is off the hook. It's just going nuts. And there's a guy named Brad Lackey and Bob Hurricane Hanna. Those are the biggest guys in motocross. They're like the echelon at that time. They were like the people that look back, and those are the guys that started the craze. And everybody wanted to be like, Bob Hurricane Hanna. And so everybody was getting bikes. So there was Jay Struble, who lived a couple houses away. His dad and mom got him a Honda Z50, and it was a tiny little bike. And that's what he learned to ride on. He was in his driveway, and he was learning how to shift, learning how to balance, and do everything that he needed to do to be able to learn how to ride. And then there was Mike Stuso, who lived next door to him. He got his first bike, and I remember it was like this baby blue color bike that his dad and him fixed up. And then he finally moved up to like a KDX. And then there was like Art Vancott down the street. He bought my other uncle's old CR 125. And then there was the Preziosis had a bike. Johnny Cavallaro had a three-wheeler. Yep, Johnny Cavallaro. Sounds like a TV show guy, right? So Johnny Cavallaro had a dune buggy. He had a three-wheeler. He was right next to the entrance of the dirt trails. And so he was riding his three-wheelers in there. And that was... his three-wheeler was the first three-wheeler I ever rode before, and I was like, wow, those are tough to ride. I always wanted to stick to my two wheels. That was just my thing. And so I start seeing that everybody's basically getting a dirt bike, and we're enjoying it. We're just blowing around all around town, having a great time on our bikes, and that's pretty much what we're doing all the time. And along the way, my uncle in 82, so I'm about 12 years old, he ends up getting a brand new YZ125. And this was the first year of a radiator on the bike, and it was behind the number plate at that. And then in 83, they moved it down to in front of the engine, and that was improved situation for the radiator and everything. But that was like those years were like the breaking into this big suspension where they were going from something like 8-9 inches in suspension, which was we thought was incredible, to something like 12-15 inches of suspension. And it really changed the way these guys would land, how fine-tuned their bikes became. And it was pretty awesome to see that actually just happening right in front of your face. And so my uncle got the YZ125, and I remember we're down at the sand pit in Ringwood at the bottom of Skyline Drive before anything was built there. And this is over by Erskine Lakes. And this, my uncle got the brand new bike, and my other uncle came. And like my other uncle Paul, he didn't ride a dirt bike for, I don't know, 10 years. He jumps on this bike and he's riding wheelies like for 100 feet. I just don't know how you get on a bike that you've never rode before, and then you have never ridden a bike with a power band, and you're able to do this wheelie for 100 feet and stuff. And he ended up crashing that day on my uncle's bike. And but the whole power band thing was a shock too, because I went from the JT60 to the YZ80, and I thought I could just start out like a pop wheelie. And I remember my bike flipped totally upside down, and I burnt my arm on the tailpipe. I got like a nasty second degree burn on my arm from that. And so that was a learning curve at the time. But so everybody in town were riding, and my uncle got the brand new bike. And then at this time, and I don't know if anybody remembers out there, Sterling Forest, okay, is right across the border in New York State. They opened up this big wide open area to go ride. They had permits that were $35 for a year, and they had this area that was about 2.5 feet by 2.5 miles by 5 miles wide, open area that you can ride in there. They had dirt tracks in there, they had trails, everything. And this went on for a couple years, and that was really just what we did almost every weekend. And it was pretty awesome at that time because no one had ever seen this, and this was new, and it was super popular. So if you're just getting in here, we're talking about what made you fall in love with motorcycles, and what made you, was there someone influencing you? Was there family members? Was that something that caught your eye? So we could see that my uncles had a big influence on me at the time, and that was my main justification for riding. So as we jumped into going to Sterling Forest, my uncle had a blue van at the time. We would load the blue van in. My uncle had his bike. My cousin Morgan had a awesome YZ60 that we had bought off of Kevin Larry, which is Dave Matthews' cousin. And so Kevin Larry sells my cousin the bike. He's got a YZ60. I have my YZ80, and the whole family. We got my mom, my aunt, my cousin, my uncle, me, my sister, everybody riding up on the weekends up in Sterling Forest. And it just was the family thing we did for maybe 2 seasons. And at that point, there was a death up there, and they actually shut it down because people were just getting out of hand, like most situations, and not cleaning up and drinking and riding. And we were just there to enjoy it, but it was something special for us as far as the family getting together and spending the day up there, and everybody riding on bikes. So when you have pictures of my mom riding on my YZ80, my aunt was on it. And we just always had a good time. My Aunt Lynn started this, going to Long Beach Island every summer, all the way back, maybe like 1981, 82. And we would go every summer. And at that point, when we were doing this, with the motorcycles, we would bring the dirt bikes in the back of my uncle's van, and we were going down 72 into Long Beach Island. I think it's 72. And there was one of the last drive up movie theaters that was right off to the side, and you wouldn't know it unless you took a look. But we would pull into there, and it was like this big sand pit that people would ride motorcycles. And but it, this is serious sand, like the beach. So you kind of got to learn how to ride all over again on this sand, because you actually have to get into like third gear to be able to get traveling fast enough to kind of like float over the sand pretty much. And so if you're just coming into here, my name is John Ryan, and I started this YouTube channel about 4 months ago. We're doing our first coffee talk together. So if you got your coffee, take a sip. It's Saturday morning, and we're having coffee and we're talking. So that's part of the coffee talk that I have with this channel. And this is my first one. And it's not about tech. It's about coffee and some good talk. So we're talking about motorcycles. This is going to be the first part of this, because I don't think it's going to be easy to cover this in one part. So I think I'm going to have 2 or 3 parts. Today I'm really going to talk about the dirt part, because that was the beginning of my motorcycle passion. And we're at the point where we're down the shore taking these bikes every year, and we're riding down the shore. We're riding wherever we can find to go. My uncle is riding with us in Scolter's Pit. Then like I said, he was one of the people that you couldn't believe would be able to ride is good, is like live in front of you. He was amazing. He would come out of Scolter's Pit. I've seen him, and this is the truth. He hit a tree about 10, 12 feet in the air where his ankle was. He hit the tree, nicked the tree coming out of the jump in Scolter's Pit, and he fractured his leg. And down the shore, I saw him jump off of a pit, like off of this wall, the sand wall. I don't even know what it was exactly, and landed. He was no joke, 15, maybe 18 feet in the air. When he came down, his right foot was forward on his peg, and he actually broke his ankle right there that summer. And so, yeah, these are the people that are influencing me. So you can see how they would, have the craziness to do the things that they were always doing, and why I kind of like pushed the edge eventually with a lot of things. So, and why I ended up having, 20 road bikes. So now we're coming into riding all the time, and this is how we got better. We were basically had our chest protectors, our Bell Moto 3 helmets, we had our Scott goggles, and our High Point boots. So if you know what I'm talking about, you remember all that equipment, give me a like, give me a shout out, say, yeah, I remember that. That's the kind of stuff we were riding with. Those were the things that were popular at that time. And so we were suiting up because that's what we were doing. We were riding hardcore every weekend and really enjoying it. And that's how much my love for motorcycle riding was. And at the same time, yeah, I mean, I had my BMX bike because that was the popular thing. And the second most interesting thing in my life was having my BMX bikes. And so, I want to give a shout out where everybody got their bikes. When you lived in Bloomingdale, it was Warfield's Bike Shop. So that was the place to go to get a bike. I had a Rampar. It was a burnt orange color Rampar. I would have loved to have a Mongoose, but they were out of our reach at that time. Those were a very expensive bike to have when I was a kid. So I had my Rampar, and I loved that bike. And so going back to getting away from bikes, and getting back to the motorcycles, yeah, I had 20 road bikes. And this is why I think it's going to take a little time to talk about all of them. But if you've learned on a dirt bike, let me know what kind of bike you learned on or what bike you have now. And tell me if you've learned on a dirt before you learned on the street, because that's a whole different, thing too. You learn on dirt and then you go to the road. I mean, I think I don't know, maybe not the first year, but for a long time, you constantly want to put your foot down and not just go into the turn and look through the turn. And it's just a whole thing. You're not power sliding, and it takes a while to get comfortable of what you're doing versus a dirt bike to a road bike. And so that was a whole different change for me. And it took a while, you know. And I also think that a lot of times, and there are a lot of years when you first start riding a road bike, a lot of people, and I've seen this, you know, everywhere, is they get a road bike and they're lucky if they ride it 500 miles a year. And that was me. That was me for a first few years when I had my bikes when I was young, because I went, you know, I got my road bike at like 20, and then I had it till like around 23, 24, and then I went no road bikes till I was like 30, and then I went crazy road bikes. And this year I hit the big 50 2 days ago. So happy birthday, 50th birthday to me. Thank you if you over on Facebook, if you dropped a message for me. I really appreciate all the people that came out and then signed up on YouTube for me and Facebook. It's fantastic to see all of you watching and taking a look and being interested in some of the things that I'm doing, live streaming and my Coffee Talk and Tech channel. I appreciate it. So now you have to learn how to ride a road bike properly on the road, and it took years, and a lot of people never improve. So that was my point. Like, for years they ride 500 miles, and you'll never become the rider you need to be at that level. So it took me till I was a lot older and a lot of reading and a lot of technical stuff to become the rider that I ended up becoming. But it all depends what you want to do with riding, though. You know, if you're happy doing what you're doing, then there's no worry about changing what you're doing. But I think some people just evolve. You know, it's like with anything. I took a look at it, and this is what I do with a lot of things. I want to get to a level, and then I want to level up again. And with that situation, it started out with just enjoying the ride, and then I kind of just kept on wanting to level up and have bikes and ride bikes that no one else had, or that I really didn't even see on the road. And that's what I think broadened my love so much more, is everybody would talk about a GSXR, and I was riding an Aprilia, or I was riding a Speed Triple, or I was riding a Buell. And these are bikes that nobody had. So what bike did you own? Was it something different? Was it a GSXR? I mean, they're great bikes. Don't get me wrong. They'll do everything you needed to do. They were the most powerful bikes at the time when I was growing up. But I had I had that leader bike. I had actually a CBR 1000RR 2006. And I chose that bike over GSXR because, yeah, maybe the GSXR had like 8 more horsepower, but I had the transmission that you could just change the gearing or anything. It was just a transmission that could slide out sideways, and no other bike had that at that time. You can change the gearing, replace gears in one day. You don't have to split the engine case. And on top of that, it was the best handling bike out of all the leader bikes of that year. And that was more important to me. So you can't go fast without having the correct suspension. And so if you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about, because that changes everything. The correct suspension, be it a dirt bike, be it a road bike, when you get that right suspension set for your body weight and your style of riding, it will change your ride night and day. And it makes you a better rider also. So that is the truth to riding. It takes years to get on a level where you're comfortable with what you're doing, and depending on what you want to do about leveling up. So those first couple years that I did transition into riding on the road, it was just the chill. I mean, I made mistakes along the way. I remember, and I've told this story a million times. First time going down the Parkway, I am with Bill Terry, myself, and there may be one other person, and I don't remember who. If you remember and it was you, let me know. But Bill Terry and and he had, I think, his first road bike. It was a Seika 2600, and that was a popular bike to have, a good bike. And I was pulling in to throw my quarter or whatever it was at that time into the basket. I go to take off from on the parkway from paying, and my back wheel just starts sliding as I'm peeling out, and I start drifting sideways, and I catch it just in time on the parkway, not to low or high side, and straighten it out. And I was like, my heart was racing. So it was that little learning experience about the grease that gets left by the cars in the lanes, and you basically got to stay in that tire lane, and you got to take off easy, and that stuff will surprise you. And those are the types of things that, if you don't know, will catch you off guard and it will take you down. So it's kind of like the same thing when you have a heavy rainfall and you go out for a ride. You got to make sure you travel those roads, because you know there's going to be some water taking some gravel into those turns, and you got to ride those roads the first time and check them out, and then you could blow through a little quicker and make sure things are in good condition, because you never know what's on the road. And it's the ultra intenseness that you get involved in on looking far enough ahead to make those kinds of changes, and what makes you a good rider. You're spotting things out eagle eye from both sides and ahead, and the concentration is exhausting, to tell you the truth. If you know what I'm talking about, leave a message, because tell me, yeah, I know what you're talking about. Because if you're just cruising around and you're not really paying attention to what's going on, and that's how things come out and get you, I mean, you can't catch everything. And part of my backstory is also, you'll never catch anything, because why I ended up stop riding 5 years ago was I had a pretty devastating motorcycle accident it was Black Friday, 2 o'clock, about 65 degrees out 5 years ago. And I'm going through an elevation change through a turn at about 50 miles an hour. I level up and I straighten out. And at that exact moment, as I level up to this little elevation change, which is, 10 feet, and a deer was running across the road and slammed into the side of my bike, right into the gas tank frame area, and my fist ended up running right into the deer's neck and just pretty much destroyed my left arm. My radius was blown apart. It was basically powder, the doctor said, and they reconstructed my left distal radius, and it took 9 months of rehabilitation to get it where it was strong enough and good enough to be able to use on the level of everyday work. So that pretty much stopped me, because my work was at jeopardy at that time. I was scared if I was going to be able to be the father and the husband that I needed to be honest with you. And along those whole issues, we'll get into what that did for me and how that affected me, because you do not stop riding a motorcycle in a heartbeat and have it not affect you. It's like anything that you do. If you're kind of like addicted to it, and it's like the love and passion of what you have, and you stop it, there is an influx of other things that occur that you have to adjust for, and you don't see them coming, and when you do, you have to deal with them. So if you've had an accident, it doesn't even have to be a motorcycle. It could be a lot of different things that changed your life. You just wake up and things change. My passion or my love for bikes never changed, but the situation did. And so it was my choice to, at this point, to just chill out. But I wanted to just start talking about the bikes and how I got there and my love for them. And it was at this time that now Bill and I rode down the shore for the first time, and we rode back. We took our motorcycles, and he he was just getting the bug at that time, along with a lot of other people. So we could see that a lot of people went from dirt bikes. My one of my best friends that when we were younger is Herb Turk, and he had a dirt bike, and then he went into a road bike. We were all transitioning from dirt bikes into road bikes. It was kind of like the thing that we did at that time, and it really just was what everybody was doing, and we loved it at that point. So if you've had a bike or you've been riding for a long time, let me know what bike you've been riding and what is the bike of your choice, and leave a message and say hi. If you're on Facebook or YouTube, you're dropping in, don't neglect to say hi or drop a comment, and we'll take a look at it. So now we are at the point where I've spent these, many years on the dirt bikes, many years learning how to work on them, change the piston and the rings out myself, basically learning how to work on a bike the way to take care of it. And it pretty much set up my whole mechanical experience in life to be able to do what I've learned mechanically. All started on bicycles and motorcycles. And this is how I got to the point to be able to rip just about anything apart that I can get my hands on. But the motorcycles pretty much are coming to an end for a dirt bike. Things are just slowing down. And my love for my BMX bikes and my dirt bikes at about 15 or 16 is pretty much starting to end. And the reason for that is because I'm just about to get my license. And at that age, getting your license is the biggest thing in your life. And so now you're selling a BMX bike that you love. You're selling a dirt bike that you love to save up for the insurance, the $2,000 insurance bill that I don't know how any kid that's like 15 or 16 or 17 is paying. I have no idea how these kids pay for this stuff. But it's like a mission to be able to save up enough to be able to get your insurance to drive. And so it kind of fades out like my dirt bike. And it's really funny. But I mean, I'm going to tell a quick story real quick. We, of course, always had friends that had road bikes. And there was this guy, his name was Sven. And Sven was from West Milford, and he was actually on the TV show Real People. And I don't know, I'm sure if you're my age, you remember the show Real People. And he had a dog that rode on his motorcycle on the back with goggles. And I'm sure if you Google it or try to look it up, you might find it. But he was my uncle's friends and family friend, and he left his motorcycle in our garage for like a solid month. And I think I was like 17 at the time, maybe just 17. And yeah, I did what most kids wouldn't do, or maybe a few would. I don't know if you would, but I took the motorcycle out. I took it for a ride a couple nights. I remember it was Goosey night. And I like took this bike out for a ride with my friends, Mike or Mark Palmieri on the back, riding through West Milford on a road bike. And then I also remember one night picking up one of my high school friends. Her name was Mairead Mullen. And I picked her up, and we took a ride through West Milford also on the same bike. I must have took this bike out like 2 or 3 times. So this is pretty much my first time ever really telling this to a bunch of people. But yep, I took the bike out. I had no license, and I rode that bike all over West Milford. And I wouldn't advise it to anybody about doing that kind of stuff, but that's what kids do. And I was in love with motorcycles, and I was riding it. And we had a blast, and it was a crazy thing, but it was fun. It was fun as heck. So if anybody remembers that, let me know. Put a comment down below. Mike, Mark Palmieri. I don't know if you guys remember that, or Mairead Mullen. I know I'm friends with her on Facebook. So, but that was the case. It was hilarious, and we were young. So, But that pretty much was the transition at that age, leaving the dirt bikes behind and moving into the road bikes. And I'm basically going to explain what my first road bike was, how I got there, and then I'm going to go on the next stream about into more detail about it. So Jay Struble, who was my next door neighbor, I mentioned him before. He also was friends with these guys. One of them, I think they were brothers, and they had this weird last name, and it was like Dave Van Wangadang. I'm pretty sure that's it. Yeah, I'm pretty sure Dave Van Wangadang and some other brother, and they were selling a 19, I believe, whatever the tariff year was. I think it's 83, where they had to cut back the 750 motorcycles to a 700, and it was a GS 700 Suzuki. That was my first bike. They were selling this bike, and Jay Struble told me about it. We roll up to their house. It was like the second to last house when you follow Hamburg Turnpike all the way out to Route 23, and it was in this like garage or shed that was packed with stuff, and so they pull it out. And I look at the bike and it looks pretty darn good. You know, I'm like pretty impressed. And they wanted $700 for the bike. And I was like, this is a good deal. And I thank Jay for letting me know. And so I bought that bike for $700. And I think the worst thing was it needed a clutch. And the clutch was slipping, but I didn't change it. I actually sold it again with the same clutch, I believe. And it lasted for a while, a bit longer. Because remember, at this time, we're riding like 1,000 miles, 500. I don't even know. It's not much mileage in a year. And I remember I got that bike, and then the first day that I got it, it was this. It was the second day I got it. I got home from work or whatever, and I'm ripping around on this bike, and it's dark out. And I'm ripping around the roads up by me, which is like Reeves Ave, Capitoline, if you're from Bloomingdale, and you know these roads. All in this pipe. I'm not even kidding you that I was on Reeves Ave and you could hear me at the Quick Check in Bloomingdale. That's how loud it was. And so, of course, you know who that attracts? The police. And so I'm strolling into my driveway on Reeves Ave at the time. I lived down there. And here comes the police at the end of my driveway. And it's Mark Gildersleeve. So he was one of the cops in town for a lot of years, and I think he just retired about 3 years ago or so. And Mark Gildersleeve, he was an awesome guy. He was a guy that you could stop in at the mobile gas station, see him there in the middle of town, and you can have a conversation with him for like an hour. He was like big into lifting weights. He was big into talking to a lot of the people in town. And that was awesome at the time for us kids, to have a guy that we could talk to like that. So Mark Gildersleeve rolls up and he rolls his window down. I'm like, hey, Mark, what's going on? He's like, yeah, that bike's kind of loud. And I'm like, no, it's not that loud. I just got it. And it's like when you give it a lot of gas, it's kind of loud. So I was like, you know, I was giving it a lot of gas and just sorry about that. And I apologized. And I'm telling you right now, that was my first bike. I did not even get my license yet. I did not even get a permit yet. And I want to tell you that I had 2 bikes before I even got my license. I rode 2 years in a row on a permit, never got my license. And that was just laziness, or couldn't get down to the motor vehicles easily with the bike. I don't even know. It was just, it's something that a few people, I've had friends that did that for years. And I did 2 years with just like riding on my permit and renewing it. And I had to take the test again. It's ridiculous. Yep. But we did it. And so Mark Gildersleeve was like, yeah, all right, just slow down, you know? I'm like, all right, cool, thanks, Mark. And I pulled the bike into the garage, and that was the end of it. I basically, my head was sweating. I just wiped my head and like, oh my God, I dodged a bullet. I dodged it. Because could you imagine what that would do to me at that time? Getting a ticket like that, no license, no insurance, no nothing. Yeah. Because I'm a kid, I'm broke, I got nothing. You know what I'm talking about? Like, I'm broke. We have nothing. That is like, I'll get to it. It wasn't important at the time. And that was my first bike. So the GS 700, it ran great. It was great engine. It had a loud pipe on it. It looked pretty darn good. And that bike was my first road bike. And I want to leave it at that. So I'm going to get into the next time we start talking about my road bikes. Now, I'll recap my first road bike again when we get back. And we see the influence that I had on the bikes was a lot of times my uncle's. And I want to give you a look of one of my bikes that I had. This is a bike. Now, if you know this bike, drop a comment down below. Let me know that you were watching. If you can figure out what this bike is and leave it in the comments, I'll be impressed. So you gotta be a bike guy to know this. But this is one of my bikes, and I think one of my favorite bikes ever. I think the looks, and it's a V-twin, so that's a hint for you guys. But you're not gonna find what it is. Not everybody's gonna know what it is. If you can figure it out, that would be very impressive. So here we got Joe Cuccinella. Thanks for stopping in and just saying hi. I really appreciate that. This is one of my guys from high school that I grew up with, and I really appreciate that. And he says that his bike was a YZ250. That was a pretty powerful bike at the time. So if you had a 250 or a 500 or a CR 500, was one of the most powerful bikes at that time. That was impressive. So Joe had a YZ250. That was a no joke bike. If you rode that in the woods, you knew that you had a bike that could basically make it through anything. That 125 that my uncle had was something else. Could you imagine at the time the two-stroke engines were the thing? They weren't banned at that point, and these two-stroke engines were no joke. There are a lot of horsepower. They were in the power band. They were impressively fast. And when they did make the transition to four-stroke, it was a big transition for motocross and for the guys riding. So that was something that wasn't easily overcome. Okay, so my son, he dropped a comment, and he knows what the bike is. Okay, so it's an Aprilia. Yep, you're right. It's an Aprilia, but I'm not going to tell these guys what kind. I want to see if anybody can leave a comment if they know even possibly the year or the name of the bike. It is an Aprilia, and it's not going to be something that everybody will know. So he pretty much gives you a hint right there that it's an Aprilia. So that was my one of my favorite bikes. And I'm going to go into a bunch of the bikes and basically go from there, go into my second bike, what interests me, and how I kept on making these decisions for these bikes, and how I kept on improving my riding skills and my basic addiction to riding motorcycles fast. And I appreciate anyone who stopped in today, or anyone that dropped a like or dropped a comment. I really appreciate it. You have no idea what it means to me. Anyone that has subscribed to my channel, Coffee Talk and Tech on YouTube, in the last couple days, I really appreciate it, because I had an influx of about 20 people that joined, and that was huge. It put a big smile on my face for my birthday, and now hit the big 5-0. So I'm pretty happy about where I am with things. I'm really trying to take these Coffee Talk and Tech channels to the next level. I hope I did okay today on my first stream. This is my first Coffee Tech, so it's kind of cool that if you stopped in and you said hi, that you're part of something that I'm just starting out. So I really appreciate it. And also, I got Joe Cuccinella said, nice job. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day, because this is your day. And I understand that if you came in here and you watched any of this, It is taking time out of your day, and it's kind of special to me that you chose to watch and take a look. So thanks again, guys. And on the next part 2, we're going to go into the next bike that I had, and we're going to go into numerous bikes that I had and my love for the riding, how it grows, who I start riding with. I may even have some guests on talking about how these relationships started. And I'm going to go into some stories along the way of people that I meet randomly on these rides, because that is the most incredible thing that I found out about riding motorcycles, is this connection that you make with strangers. I mean, there are just people out there, whether you were riding dirt bikes, and you know what I'm talking about. It could be anything, but some reason when I was out riding on these road bikes and I would stop in various places, it was just incredible to meet people and their stories behind riding and the things they would tell you that you don't know them from nothing, and they end up telling you a story that is something I think that maybe you would really want to know the person pretty deeply. And they shared some information that was pretty incredible. So thanks for stopping in. I love you guys. I'll see you on the next one, and I appreciate you watching. Have a good day.